Hi everybody, my name is Jakub and I'm today here to talk to you about some kind of the different success stories, different developer stories than the, let's say, the standard one which we can match into the mobile gaming market. The short plan for my speech today is, as you can see there, I will start who I am, who am I, at which project I was worked in the last 2 or 3 years, what I learned from that, what I created, how I define the indie games into current market, and then how the success stories from different projects which concentrated on the indie games market, the success stories of two developers who we were working in the last 2 years at the Dread XP, how that went, how is their backstory, how is everything happened for them to make a successful premiere. I am Jakub. I was one of the co-creators of the Indie Game Starter. Before that I was the creator of another companies, both of the companies before was concentrated on the educational purposes, of the accelerator and of the help with the developers, the students at the beginning of their journey to develop the skills which for them most important to be successful in the long-term work as the developers, as the game developers and so on. And I think the last part of this ecosystem that we're creating, both in the educational purposes and the acceleration purposes, is the Indie Game Starter. So this is the both accelerator and indie game publisher. We are the, let's say, collaborators of the Dread XP. Dread XP is the horror game publisher, part of the Big Picture Group from the United States. What we are and why we are concentrated on the indie games and solo developers. We want to create the space to break, to make a possibility and make it acceptable for the people at the start of their journey to come into game industry, to come into the game dev, to work and participate into the game development process. As far as we know, there is a lot of people who want by passion work in the gaming industry. From my personal experience, mostly in the PC market or in the console market, wants to work on the ambitious project, on the deep games with a lot of mechanics, stories and so on. And there is not a lot of companies on the market to make all of the people as accessible as possible to aim to enter our market. I know in the mobile market, and by the way, I don't know practically anything about the mobile gaming industry, but I think the different perspective from this PC market might be interesting for some of you. But basically, our main team and our main idea is that we will bring the teams, the studios at the beginning of their journey, to their first commercial release at the Steam, Epic, GOG, and also all of the other publishing platforms. And one of the other things that we are concentrated in is to helping indie games at the start of their journey, but we have to find out what is the indie games for the gaming industry and for the PC market at the base, right? So our idea is that there is no only bilateral decision to make between AAA, AA or A segment and the indie game market. There is a games who wants to be and who is by practice between these two systems, and that's why I want to start with explaining this idea of these 4 segments in the gaming industry. So as the segment A, I see the companies with full corporation structure, the teams of more than 100 people or close to that, and of the development process of the titles for longer time than 3 years. And we are not there, as you can see, as the Indie Game Starter. Then we have the B segment. B segment is the companies under 100 people, around 15 people, companies who is working on the titles at about 2 or 3 years, and this is the companies who is working in some part of the corporation structure. How much of you here working with Jira, for example, or any, and any of the other, let's say, agile management structures? I know that's the basic, and that's something what we borrow from the standard IT market and standard IT industry, but that's for me something from the corporation structure, and it's of course good for the companies in this segment, but it's not something necessary and only possible to practice into the market. Then we have the C segment. That's the companies who is the most of the current gaming industry in Poland. Because as far as you know, we have around 400 companies in Poland who is in the game dev industry. And I think, and from my personal experience, and also some data collected by different NGOs and so on, we can think about 300 of them being and employing less than 20 people. So basically, in the C segment, we have registered companies, a lot of times stock market companies who went fully public, and these companies still working on the games. They want, and they normally in their corporate communication have to put in the indie game market, but for me, they have some parts of the corporation structure. They want to implement agile management solution, other management solution, and basically they most of the time working in the niche with really safe projects, right? Because for me, one of the key points in the indie game market and what is making our game successful in the indie game market is taking a risk, making a game different than than that what player can find normally on the market, right? In the C segment, also the small teams is working not in the so kind of different and risky solutions. They are working on the maybe simulational games, maybe the games who is close to other genres, to other titles, because already published. So this is one of these differences. And then finally, we have indie games. Indie game for me is something created by the team around less than 10 people, without corporational structure, a lot of times make of passion. This is the games who is really taking a development risk, because we are going with work with the different genres, different teams, different styles and so on. So we are working with the titles who can go extremely well as the budget that we are working on, or extremely poor. I know the failure is possible for each of the segments, but the failure in the indie game market means like 15 sales copies, or maybe 10. What does that mean for us? We, as the start of the team, knew that when we were creating with Lucas and with other people, Lucas is there, hello Lucas, when we were creating the indie game startups, we knew that there is a solutions and there is the companies and possibilities to start working into indie games market or into game industry by different results. Your company is probably taking some kinds of the trainees, employing junior developers. Another team was created and founding in the startup way, right? We have a beautiful project of the game. We do it after hours when we were students, we find the investor and so on, we create a studio and jump off to the C or D segment, right? We want to create a possibility to start into the gaming industry in the different ways. So basically, what we are doing is doing really something similar, what we already successfully do into the American market with the DreadXP. That's what will be the success stories today, will be of the two titles. What we did in this way, and basically we started in this year. What are the chances of failure? This presentation, as I see it right now, is more for the developers. But basically, the joke here is that I made up this number. Because that's really hard to find out if on the indie games market, how big is the number of the projects who don't even go public in any way, don't go announce it and so on. We are working on the market who is extremely hard to find our places. We knew it into the mobile gaming industry, we knew it onto the console or the PC market. Is it for me? I think because this is the B2B event and not something that I have for students, I maybe will skip it. but that's basically the three most important principles for the indie game developer. You have to be organized by yourself, because you won't have a Jira, product manager and producer to look after you and make you do the right style of the time. Most of the times, you and your 3 or 4 friends in the team have to figure out by yourself what is the most optimized and the best way of work together. You will have to find a time to work on the title, which is the problem because 90% of the times indie games developers don't get any money. They don't have investors, they don't find a publisher after most of the work was done, right? So you have Steam page and publisher still will ask you for, okay, but you have to read the number of the wish list, the numbers is too low, bring me the bigger numbers, we will sign the deal. This is the sad reality of the most of the indie developers. And the last one is the risk, because as we were talking before, we can make a stable game in the one of the niches, we can make a stable hyper-casual games into our portfolio of different hyper-casual games, but when we are taking a risk, and the last game was the strategy game about elves, bad elves fighting with good orcs or anything like that, and your next game will be the space shooter, there's always a risk. So basically you have to make it out and figure it out if you are ready and able to take a risk about publishing what you really want to do and want to risk about the games. And now I want to move to some kind of the most happy ending stories for me. So will be the Mortuary Assistant and Sucker for Love. Here I put the generic stock guide from this to present the more stock opinion about this game. So basically Mortuary Assistant is a horror game that has the players as the funeral home employee, and Sucker for Love is a comedic blend of dating simulator and horror presented in the form of the visual novel. I take it out from the Google. And basically, both of these descriptions are correct, right? We are talking about the games, who is doing what is did, but there is a lot more in both of these game stories and both of this game mechanic and stuff that bring it successful. The Sucker for Love was created by Josh. I have to do that. Here is me, at the right side, and on the left is the Josh. What is the connection point between these two games is not only we as the publisher, but also both these games is the story of the solo developers, right? So here is me, on the right you can see, and on the left you can find a full development team from the Sucker for Love game. Sucker for Love, the idea was, for me, the most indie way of creating an idea for the game as far as I know. Josh was the game master for the RPG sessions into Call of Cthulhu, and he made a scenario with a strange idea of dating the monsters from the Cthulhu and Lovecraftian mythology. He loved that idea that much, he spent his next 9 months, by the way, he was not a game developer before, that was his debutant project. He spent his next 9 months to working into this title and into this idea to the solo project. And I think pretty much indie market take it pretty good. You have more than 300,000 copies sold after these 9 months of the development of the solo developer. And on the other hand, we have a Mortuary Assistant. As the Josh was the developer who don't have any experience before, that Brian Clark, a developer of the Mortuary Assistant, is a specialist from one of the biggest gaming companies in the world. He was working for around 16 years before that into gaming industry. He was the employee of the Ubisoft, he was the employee of the Trion, the publisher of the Rift MMO. He was working at the Disney too. And after that, he comes with the idea of making a B-class horror game where you have to fight and do stuff with the demons in the horror sector. The idea is good, and the genre of both of these titles is horror, so you both of them make a good decision with the finding of the publisher. But what is the most important difference for me and for the observation of that? Both of them have a really different experience. Brian was the guy who was tired of working on the titles in the hours and hours and hours, years after years, on the titles who don't have passion about it. And Joseph simply never do a game before that. He teach himself how to do it with the Udemy and so all of the stuff. When Brian make a game in the really hard environment, doing everything from the first person, working by himself about the stuff, assets and so on and so on, Joseph takes a lot of different approach and simply make a visual novel. But both of these games have a funny catch, and I can assure you that both of these games was made with passion and by passion, and this is the most important difference for different indie game starter, for the indie games, and this is where I think we can find indie game success. I know that's really different from the mobile market, so I'm really happy to be here and learn something about the mobile market too. And I think that's it if we are coming to the presentation. Maybe there is any question, but I don't think. Oh my god, everything is okay?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my god, another time. So, any other questions?
So yeah, thank you, Jakob, very much. Thank you. Maybe there are any questions?